idea. We've been talking about pendulums, and we've been talking about that swing, and we've talked about it a lot. And I wanted to bring it down to a level where everybody can kind of understand where we're at, because in yours and my mind, it makes perfect sense. It's like shaking up a bottle. You got the cork on the top, and you're shaking up a bottle, and you pop that cork, and everything just kind of explodes out, and what's left inside is probably worth keeping, and the rest of it's, just loud. And so we have this pendulum swing. What that means when we talk about that is, for the viewer, is that, the last few administrations have been just very, very, very opposite of each other, and we've got fundamental changes within the parties going on. You've got very popular names, Schumer, a Pelosi, a Trump, is very different from a Romney or a Bush, very different. And so we've got a very different pendulum swing that's been going on probably since Bush Sr. has started to, I'd say that it was fairly in the middle during Clinton era, because you had the House and Newt Gingrich, and in that you had the House that was kind of, they played well together.
Yeah.
Interestingly, played very well together. You've got Newt that's still a very...
I just heard him on the radio this morning.
A very large... He's a supporter of Trump. He likes what he's doing.
He was criticizing this morning.
Does have some ideas, though, as to how to pivot and how to kind of make some things better. I like that.
Yeah.
I like intra-party reflection. But without the big words, we've got polarization of the parties. Probably, I would say, started with Senior, but then had a hiatus, and then Junior, Bush Jr., and then Obama. I mean, we really started motoring fast as far as swinging pendulums. There were market concerns. There were war concerns. There's, global economy type things that were being brought to the forefront. But this is nothing new. We've been dealing with global, the globe as far as the economics goes for a long period of time. Now you've got who I think is going to run for the next president. I'm going to drop it right now. It's crazy, and just think on it, because this is going to slap you a little bit weird. Everybody figures J.D. Vance. Mr. Wonderful, I think, is poised to slide right in there. I mean, he's getting a little bit more out there, getting a little bit more aggressive, and he's very well-spoken and very presidential in the way he kind of conducts himself. He's a been there, done that guy. And oh, you want to take a crack at that?
Is his name Kevin?
Kevin O'Leary.
O'Leary. I couldn't. I was going to say O'Reilly, but he's a bit. Does he have any political?
Yeah.
He does.
No experience.
Yeah, I didn't think he had any political experience. He is he's in Trump's mold, I guess. He's a celebrity in his own right. He's in a reality show called Shark Tank, and so
The guy who's like, we need like 2,000% tariff.
Yes, he's that guy, and he's not. He doesn't seem radical when he says it. He seems practical. Like, look, they're ripping us off. We go in there. We have an invention that cruises over to be produced in China, or to be made in China, and once it hits 5 million buys, they just knock it off, and they can even sell it under the same name. They're not just held to any laws. It's a lawless thing, and then more people lose billions of dollars over there from that alone because of the internet. You can just go on to Alibaba and buy whatever widget that was created that was somebody's life's work, and all the profit and development.
I get that. Is there actual research that's corroborated that the market gets under? Because I look at these companies that get ripped off. Most of it's like Nike, and like, are they really losing a big market share with having these fake products on the market?
Nike's not the one he's talking about.
Who's he talking about?
He's talking about the newer development, the newer research, the newer products that are developed here, and his intellectual property is what he's talking about specifically. And they buy into this intellectual property, and they develop it, and they put all the money into it.
But are American consumers buying that knockoff product? Is what he's saying?
And then after 5 million purchases, China just clones it,
right?
And under the same name, so it could be called Reed's Wells Services or whatever, and they can sell it under Reed's Wells Services, but it's a complete knockoff, same exact thing for a fraction of the price. And which one are you going to buy?
And that's what I'm asking.
So it's not Nike.
Are we?
Because nobody knows Reed's Wells.
So that's the thing is, I'm wondering, like, honestly, and maybe this is just me, I don't know, if I'm going onto a Temu or whatever else, I know I'm likely going to get an inferior product. So if it's something I really want, like some IP that I really want, I'm usually going to buy the name that I
What O'Leary's saying is you
so
don't
I'm just
know.
wondering.
What O'Leary's saying is you don't know now.
Yeah, but if you're going on to Temu, you know.
I understand, but if you're going onto Alibaba, you can buy a Louis Vuitton or whatever.
Right, but you're getting a fake Louis Vuitton.
You can buy it. No, not necessarily.
So people buy real products.
Right. It's the same bloody thing. It's made from the same factory.
No, I get that it's no, and that's not what I'm arguing. I'm not arguing that the product's not similar. What I'm arguing is if you are buying Louis Vuitton and you want Louis Vuitton, you're going to Louis Vuitton's website.
Well, probably.
Yeah.
That could be, or Bentley.
If you want a fake Louis Vuitton, you're going on to Alibaba's website, and you know what you're getting, whether it be the same product or not. So I'm just wondering whether that, and I've not heard this before, and so I'm trying
to. He's very persuasive. He's very angry because this happens a lot, and obviously he's been bit.
And I'm wondering if it's more on the international. Are they losing international markets?
What happens is American companies are going and producing their things there.
Sure. And
they have no recourse. So the Chinese don't play ball in the WTO. They don't. They don't even show up. Sue me. And now we learned firsthand.
So why wouldn't an American company, if they're worried about that, just not go produce it in China?
That's what they're saying is.
But that has nothing to do with tariffs. That's just an American company's decision.
The bottom line is tariffs are a fun word to throw around. And where I was going to go with this is shake up the bottle and the pendulum thing that we started with. I'm going to circle back around to that. You've got this guy kind of really hot to trot about this, and he's not typically that way. He's very level. He's very diplomatic. Has a lot of your qualities. I don't have any of his. I would love to, but I just don't.
Have any of his money.
Well, that would be nice, right? I'd like to have that problem. Let's see if we can't find out. People will start tuning in at some point and finding this incredibly valuable. What we have is we've got this pendulum swing and this O'Leary guy saying, look, this is what's really happening. And he's explaining it to a detail that Trump just kind of rolls over. But it's
because
really
I've been really
Trump's
disappointed about how the way the tariff situation has been presented, honestly.
Well, you being an investor in Lucid should probably be very excited about what's going on.
I mean, the only reason Lucid's afloat is because of Saudi money, though. So.
Right. But I don't.
I mean, they did buy the factory here in Coolidge.
It looks to me like Lucid might not be a half bad investment here in the next while.
Yeah, who knows?
I'm kind of rooting for you. I really am.
That's
be awesome.
One of the many that I've lost lots of money on. It's a electric car company. They're
cool
better
name.
than Tesla in my opinion, but they have not figured out how to produce and market in enough way. They have actually factories here in Arizona. You'll see a few cars out there.
Yeah. Anyway, my point is so the left swung really far left, really, really rapidly. Now I'm sitting there looking at it from a 30,000-foot view, and theoretically, it looks like the right swinging very far right to basically undo what the left did. Like, for example, Harvard. Why are we spending billions of dollars on Harvard? Why is Westover, who has no children that I'm aware of, going to Harvard, or me, I don't have any there either, or a lot of the people out there listening don't have anybody going to Harvard. Why is our tax dollars going to Harvard?
Is that specific to Harvard?
No. Harvard's the first one to make
Harvard
a noise.
just pissed off Trump.
Yeah. Harvard's the first one to make some noise.
Harvard's the first
and
one to
the
fight
rest
back.
of them are like, oh, no, don't do that, because noise is not what they want.
Yeah.
They'd like to float right under the radar with this, because they have been. So I represented a cat 10 years ago, maybe a little longer, maybe a little less. I don't know exacts. And we went all the way through the ASU program. This is the ASU justice that they have there. And we won the justice trial at ASU, and only to have 2 weeks later, the dean of regents, that's what they call it, so the head honcho, expel my client. Anyway, despite their own ruling. So a student that's going to a federally funded university, Arizona State University, has zero due process. Like, that whole thing was not due process. That was an internal mechanism. There was no innocent until proven, yada, yada, yada. No due process. So if you're going to get one red nickel from the government, don't you think you should have, at a minimum, due process?
Now you're bringing up a whole different animal right now
Yeah,
with
so,
what's going on with
but I'm
these
staying above it
student
right
visas.
now. I don't want to really cruise in here. I'm
Because the
just staying
student
above
visas,
it.
I've had about 20 people in my office in the last couple of weeks,
Yep.
and I got a bunch to say about that. But
And with it now, you've got, so I'm going to maybe get to that, but maybe not. So you've got a lot of undoing to do, because there's a lot of wasted money going out there for whatever reason. And when you have a Ivy League school like Harvard, everybody identifies to Harvard, and I think that Harvard made Trump very pleased that they made some noise, because now he could really kick him, because he doesn't like Harvard at all. I'm going to get to a point that's outside of the pendulum, but he's going to go make an example of Harvard. And Harvard's going to not be Harvard very much longer. Their donors they're dissipating. The donor is the government, because we're very proud of our Ivy League institution, Harvard. And right now, with Trump in anyway, who cares? And so why are they nervous? Well, because their graduates don't give them money, because they just go into academia.
so tell me why why does Harvard need to be made an example of? Just out of curiosity, instead of the education system and where we spend our money in general, the only reason I see Harvard being targeted is because they pissed off Trump.
Right.
So should a president be using the fact that you disagree with them as a weapon to...
I don't think that it's a piss off Trump. I think
It's a piss off Trump.
I think Trump's taking it on the chin pretty good, but the reality is all Harvard did was Bud Light. That's all they are, is Bud Light. So Bud Light traipses out Dylan Mulvaney and every red-blooded Bud Light drinking dude is like, yeah, I'm not drinking this no more type thing. Harvard literally pulls that. I mean, 82% of their staff are far left. 82%. And so it's propaganda beehive.
Sure, it's almost every Ivy League school. You'd find this in Columbia. You'd find it in Penn. Tend to run liberal.
Yep, all of them,
because they're academia.
Academia in general does,
and social rights and whatever else. The major challenge I have is that we are in a really big pattern, whether it be this administration, the last administration, or just politically in general, that we weaponize systems of our government when people don't agree with us.
So who's to blame? Because you and I have...
It's getting worse.
Yeah, you and I have walked through this, and it seems to be getting faster and faster and faster. When we potted last, because we haven't done it in a couple weeks, I've been missing you, but when we last potted, we were talking all about the news of the day wasn't tariffs. And this is 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
This is 2 weeks ago. We're not talking tariffs then. We were talking, I don't remember was it Doge? For a minute, and then it was immigration for a minute, Doge, and then whatever else. I mean, it's been boom, 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 one thing after another, after another, after another. And we've got a border that's closed, but we have nobody that we can deport. We're trying to figure out our head from a hole in the ground there, and our program would be good. Yeah.
So now they've just resulted to deporting people that are legally here.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
it's
low-hanging fruit at this point is what we're going at.
Right. And so the end of the day, it's interesting to me, but so you've got a lot of things going on. You have tariffs that are frankly not even tariffs. He's just trying to get everybody in the world together and say, let's trade a little bit more fairly. We're trying to carry everybody.
I love that you feel that way, and I love that you have that opinion. Mm-hmm. The world market and the world is not following your
No, I agree. I mean,
your patience.
My patience and my opinion is not going to reflect the market. The instability of what's going on is the reason why the market's needle is going like this right now. It's an instability thing,
and
it's happening
like
very quickly.
Absolutely worst thing that we can have in a
there's no question.
Market.
It is very quickly, though, as we've seen with Trump, and I do think this is the case, as we've seen with him the first go around very quickly. Like for example, COVID hit, and holy crap, it hit the fan really fast, and it went from like shaking all over the place to he got it real controlled real quick. So, but it didn't seem it at the time. It did not seem it for those 3-4 months. And so, to me, I find that interesting.
Yeah,
And so we're here.
I hope he's getting quicker with this because unfortunately, like COVID, not minimizing COVID, but financial markets. And right now, like I said, I just had a meeting last night with the way the real estate market's going and how it's reacting to Trump's tariffs and whatever. Like everything is being affected right now.
Right.
Because one thing we've always kind of prided maybe Trump on is that he sticks to his convictions, which he is in this point, but these sticking to the convictions aren't working. And I don't know how quick his pride will let him pivot a little bit. It looks like, yesterday for the last 2 days he has been, but it's still, but then it's talking out of both sides of the mouth. It's like, okay, we're going to do this, but yeah, also we're going to increase. Don't think that I won't come through on my promises of tariffs and whatever else. And so,
and I believe he will, but I don't believe that I think he's using the word differently than what a tariff is. I really
then his PR team sucks.
Yeah. Well, probably so, but he's got 4 years, and his PR team's going to have to clean some things up and get a few wins for the midterms.
Yeah, because that was what Gingrich said this morning. They're like, look, his approval rating's now dipped below 50%.
He needs to get some political wins for the 2-year election. He needs to get some wins for the midterm to where he can continue on going this direction. But we're talking about this pendulum swing. So I think we pretty much painted this picture of we're going back and forth, back and forth. We had Obama deporter in chief, but those weren't headlines. Interesting enough. We've got asylum that's a big word nowadays, and did it start on Trump's time, and was it abused by Biden's time? Yeah, and that's a big problem. Not many people know that the asylum, the A word, kind of started during the Trump first administration. I think it was an inadvertent or unintended consequence of shutting down the border the way it did, but at the end of the day, that did happen then, and then got completely asinine during Biden, and so now we can't. Now we can't deport anybody, or we can, or we try it. I don't know. We got a Maryland man that's not a Maryland man, but we did miss a step. And so what do? Bring him back to fill out the form of paper and deport him because he's already, on his way out anyway, or should have been. But he wasn't
legally. No, like he was granted withholding. So
yeah, and so legally you're right. And so there's a piece of paper
from deportation
lacking.
Now, whether Trump thinks he should have been granted withholding, that's where the issue becomes. He thinks he was a bad guy.
You had a legal system that had already adjudicated him on a bad path.
Kind of. That's.
He wasn't going in a good direction. He wouldn't have been a client.
He was
that
granted
you would have been,
relief, so he was granted withholding. So that's the difference. Is that a judge actually decided that he won his case. The difference is that withholding is not asylum. It's a different type of thing, but basically it's protection from deportation, and then we deported him.
Right.
So whether Trump thinks he should have been deported or not, that's a matter of Trump's.
And public's going to fight about that a little bit, and you're going to have a pendulum swing on that.
But unfortunately, that wasn't the legal part of it. The judge already made that decision. So.
Right. And so we would like to have, but I understand those folks that say, and I'm getting off topic because I'm going to go somewhere super interesting to me. I wanted to start with pendulum because it's been in my mind since I've been wanting to pod with you for a while, that pendulum. And I feel like straight up 100%, we're sitting here trying like crazy to bring production back to the United States. We're sitting here trying like crazy to, at least that's what.
Will that work?
Okay, so I'm getting there. I'm trying to.
Okay,
it's
sorry.
like, no, it's okay. It's like, is he going to go swing a hammer? Is his little brother going to go swing a hammer?
That's what I'm wondering. I'm like, I get the idea of U.S. made, make America great, and in principle, that would be amazing if we could control costs. We could produce things cheaply, and we could do it while giving jobs to Americans that really want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that ship has sailed, and maybe that's where you were getting.
That's
at
where I'm
least
going.
At least for 70% of those.
Here's the problem,
jobs.
and again, it's going to cruise right into what I really wanted to talk about. Here's the problem. We've been sold BS for the last 30 years. You and I grew up in a world wherein somewhere around my graduating and getting to 25 years old mark, like a 4-year degree was almost becoming like that was an important thing. That was the next step.
College was
That was
majorly
start.
pushed.
That was just the start of the push. So I was at the front end of that push. So I didn't have a big tailwind to that push. I didn't have a lot of tailwind. There was affirmative action at that point. There was all of those things that I frankly didn't really pay attention to, or
Until you tried to get into law school.
even then I kind of it was one of those things. It's like you just accept it. It was weird. It's just like, she's going to be in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
And that, that race is going to be in front of me. It was almost an acceptance of the reality. I didn't drill real hard on it at the time. I just put my head down, went to law school and got done and went to work. It's fine. But there was that push. And now we're looking at, there is nothing, no investment that we could have done, and I'm not sure you can invest in universities. That would have been great. But there is nothing that has enhanced in cost, more so, not real estate, not the stock market,
Than the cost
not
of education.
than the cost of education. So what's been going on underneath the closed doors is just we've been funneling and pumping propaganda that you need to be educated, and we have a bunch of educated idiots now that are worthless and don't know how to do anything. And we have a class system that is getting to where you have an elitism. And that's what's happening is we have an elitism, and then we have the poor. And our middle class is really starting to kind of get weakened and weakened and weakened. And the media that's stirring this, we've called it pendulum. I called it a bottle earlier, that's stirring this, that's whipping this, it's whipping this. Well, he went to Harvard. Well, he went to Columbia. Well, he went to Dr. Went wherever, and he's saying that we shouldn't do this for COVID. And this other doctor that went to the same school has been canceled, and this, that, and the other. And so these headlines and these quick hits, and we're talking about tariffs today and Doge yesterday, and the day before that immigration, and the day before that whatever else, and so on and so forth. And now we've got Russia war that'll make a 3-day cameo for a minute and a half. We've got Congress still doing nothing. We've got the Senate that likes to jump up and down and have a few likable characters say some aggressive things, but nothing ever happens. We've got us that are sitting here going, okay, so when does this happen before in our history? We can always look at France. Sure, we can look at France, but what about, why do we revere the Founding Fathers so much? I think we revere the Founding Fathers so much because they were men of means. They were the oligarchy. They were.
That's true. They weren't swinging the hammers, right?
Right, they weren't. They were the oligarchy, and they sacrificed their positions and their lives for what we have now. That's probably why we revere them so. I mean, it should be a big reason why, or at least a reason. Then we have a whole entire war. It's a civil war. Everybody pretty much knows about that, and everyone thinks it's about slavery. It was not about slavery. It's about snootery. Slaves just came with the program. It was about the South killing it economically, trading with every other country in the world but the North because they made more money. with what they were pushing out. So the Dixiecrats were a very real thing. They were more educated, they had money, they had slaves, and we fought a war, and we called it about slaves. Now, slaves did have a lot to do with the war. I'm not saying that Abraham Lincoln was, but it wasn't the only reason for the war.
Other elements to it, for sure.
So, and a lot of people forget that.
Well, I mean, because it's easier to talk about a civil war and make sure there's a moral high ground with it.
And the moral,
that's with every war.
Was a good reason for it, with every, perfectly put.
Go on. War we do. No, absolutely.
Every war has elements of a moral high ground. World War II had elements of a moral high ground.
Even the war on terror right now is obviously freeing us of terror and freeing women's rights in those countries and whatever.
But there's some ugly to every war, and we fight in the name.
But a lot of times, what war, and you're right, if you're going to study who's making those decisions behind the scenes, it's most always economic.
Yes.
So.
Okay, so now that we got that out the way, I want to get to that elitism. And I know that you've seen this, and people like us need to speak up, because I've seen it too. We've both been subjected to systems that are significantly broken, that need mending, fixed, sometimes even turned on their head, but I would prefer fixed or mending. Those words seem to be a little bit more tolerable. Yeah. And we've had some individual in front of us that is making a decision with zero life experience, with zero boots on the ground, with no skin in any game ever, that went from academia, that whether it be in academia, and we experience it there too, or whether it be in the workforce as you as an attorney, me for a long time as an attorney, it was one of those things where this judge doesn't know what the Sam they're talking about. They don't know any real life consequences. They're not seeing what justice is. They're very far removed from reality. And then that same said judge, a year or two later, changes pronouns and this, that, and the other, and it drives you nuts. You start to put that in a category, and it starts to drive you nuts. But there's 150 other judges that didn't do the pronoun switch, that did the same dumb move. These prosecutors, you get to deal with same ones over and over and over again, and so that's probably pretty. You actually inherited one that I couldn't stand. We'll say her name off the air, but you probably know her by now. But anyway, you'll say her name off.
A judge?
No, it's a prosecutor.
Okay.
Yeah, but anyway, these prosecutors, and some are good and some are not, and so on and so forth. I'm assuming it's kind of a similar mix in the immigration world, but it's an immigration world. It's a different world, but similar. It's got think tank thinking and policies that don't really have anything to do with law. They have everything to do with how we administer, how we're going to treat this case because it falls into this bucket. That's not a law. That's your policy for your. And Tucson has a different one than Phoenix, and Arizona has a different one than California, and California has a different one from New Mexico, and so on and on we go, in Texas and yada. So to me, it's interesting. Here, when we represent somebody, whether it be criminally or in a divorce or there's some judges that will not tackle in a divorce proceeding. They will not tackle anything of substance in a temporary orders hearing. Well, you're there, and a temporary orders hearing is a very sensitive time of a divorce. That's the very beginning of everything. It's when all the
kids are being set and property.
Things are starting to be set in place and moving towards a direction, and that's the time to make a direction, to rule upon a direction. That's a very important time, and we treat it that way. But some judges punt, and they are doing more harm than good. And granted, maybe they've never gone through a divorce. Maybe they haven't been sitting on the bench very long. Maybe they're lazy. Maybe they had a bad day. I don't know what the reasoning behind it is, but we have what's called they go home and their life doesn't change one day to the next, one day to the next, one day to the next. as far as we know. It certainly didn't change because of this particular case or that particular case. So we've created this elitism. And there's a Supreme Court case where Alito and Clarence Thomas went nuts on the dissent. And I agreed with them 100%. And you had 7 others that went the other way. And regardless, and this is your world now, regardless of where you land on that ruling, it was a bad one. Now, the reasoning behind how they got there is just bad. Okay, now, it was a great opportunity to do some fixing.
Why do you say that?
Well, I think that you've got judges that are you've got 2 judges that have been there, done that, starred in the movie, and know what a Supreme Court justice does and is. Okay? You have 7 elitists that don't have a whole lot of anything beyond a big resume, a CV that looks real pretty. CV means resume, fancy resume. They have fancy, fun CVs. They don't have a whole lot of practical experience. They have most of their experiences loud. Like, look at me. I graduated Columbia.
Alito's pretty loud.
Alito's good, though, and he's been there
Alito's
for a
good
long
if you
time.
like his politics.
Look, it is what it is. I just think that their dissent was scathing because there wasn't, and this is my opinion on it without getting into any of the facts, there wasn't the requisite court rulings for them to rule upon.
It's weird because they're making the dissent argument that basically the Supreme Court didn't function the way it usually functions and it made a rash decision without doing all the preliminary stuff that they usually do. Right. Is that how you understood it?
Yes.
So the challenge I have with that, just on the legal side of things, not the political side of things, is, and actually it mixes both of them, is that decision partly had to be made because this is my world on immigration. That decision had to be made in the middle of the night because Trump was ignoring district court orders and circuit court orders, and he was doing things that were basically, he was giving the bird to the judicial system. And so because of that, you had to act quickly and actually have because and I don't know if he's going to even respect the Supreme Court, you would hope, but that was the last ditch effort to actually have him comply.
So I would assume we've got precedent that Biden didn't either.
That was the last ditch effort to get him to stop having planes take off in the middle of the night, and
I just think it was
having
the wrong
people
format.
disappeared.
I just think it's the wrong use of the. I just think it's the wrong use of.
I think as long as we respect, this is
what
my
we're
big
doing is we're inviting judicial into politics now. But we're reeling
But it's
them
supposed to be there. That's our checks and balances, and that's the problem that I have is right now is that I still believe fully. I know it's getting weakened, but I still fully believe in our judicial system. And if we're going to give it the bird. And not listen to orders, and not, even though they frustrate us, even though they go against and make our policies slow down and whatever else. But if we're at the point, especially with a Supreme Court that leans conservative, and we're still going to give them the bird, that makes me nervous.
What I would do,
because then we're dictatorship.
What I would do is we're needing to lean more towards what Alito and Thomas were saying. Look, do it right.
Do it right.
Everybody else to
but
do
you've
it
got
right.
to comply with the orders that are in place in
so
order to do that.
You know what I mean? And go unanimous on that. Say that. We're not going to hear this right now. Do it right. And then we will hear it. And then we will slam the door on whatever is right. That would have been correct. They did. They ready shot aim. They did what they were complaining about Trump doing.
I think
they looked at the pot and called the tea kettle black. They did exactly what they were ruling against. I don't like that.
No, I'm
and
not.
There's no getting around it. And damn it, if the Supreme Court's going to do it, we're screwed because now we need the judicial back. We need them. We need to pull it back, make it the referee it's supposed to be. Okay, put the blinders back on, Lady Justice, and make it to where our people, the people we represent, the people that we will always represent, take bullets for, die for, these people that we've spent our lives for. Giving them a fair shot.
That's the thing that I'm worried about. That's the due process part that I have a struggle with.
I do too.
And that's where it was.
I think
that's
we're
why that
coming at
decision.
The same thing from a different direction.
That's why the decision was made so quickly, was because due process was being completely thrown out the window. And this was my world because this was an immigration. The court decision you're talking about is an immigration decision, and what was happening was, and it was on a specific case, but it really had to do with how they were treating all these people that were being accused of being gang members with zero notice, with zero proof, with zero evidence, and they were just deporting him. And not only, the problem that I have is deporting him is one thing. Look, you don't have a right to be here, then go back to Venezuela. But deporting him to the CCAT in El Salvador, where you've got a life sentence and you're never going to see the light of day again, and you're treated like, and I'm okay if they prove that these people are gang members,
whatever, M13.
But there's been way too much smoke of they deported me because of my Real Madrid tattoo from the soccer team. They deported me because I have an autism puzzle piece that they considered. And now the government's backtracking and, oh, well, that wasn't the only thing. But tattoos, yes, definitely is a big thing. And so, but that decision's made in 24 hours. No judicial proceeding, no judge oversight, no time to respond. They're given a notice that says, you're on a plane tonight, and this is why you're on a plane, because you're a gang member. And they're going, what? Well, and they have no time to call family.
How much better would our system be in play right now? We need to put our
I'm not
system
telling
in play.
But
and we need Congress. So how much better would it be to have not a Congress asleep at the switch and changing some of these things and actually making a difference? And we've been complaining about immigration and its holes in the system for a long period of time. Do I believe that those that are here illegally are entitled to due process? No, I do not.
So you're not a constitutionalist.
I am, but they're here illegally.
Yeah, but that's not what the Constitution says.
But what does the Constitution say?
Constitution says anybody present in the United States has a right to due process.
Okay, but I would say a limited right of due process.
That's what that's Trump's response is that, and that limited is 24 hours with no notice and get on a plane.
I would say then get Congress to show and then have it ruled upon. But how limited?
When is that going to? You're speaking out of both sides of the mouth, saying Congress doesn't do anything, but make Congress do anything.
I would
make Congress to do something, but we know that's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen.
So,
which puts Trump and the Supreme Court in a crappy situation because we have one leg
here's
of
my
our
problem.
government not doing a dang thing.
I have zero problem with what Trump's ideas are. I need him to slow down. I know that you love to throw everything against the wall and see what sticks, but slow the freak down, because when you're starting to do this stuff and so here's my big. I'm sorry, I'm not a Trump fan in the last 2 weeks. And here, I'll give you a couple of examples. It's starting to really bother me, and I'm going home and losing sleep over. I get a kid coming in here with 5 kids who's a bishop of the church who gets his student visa revoked in the middle of the night at 1 a.m, told he has 10 days to leave the country. Do you know what his crime was? He's in the middle of his PhD program, and his crime was fishing without a license.
Okay.
Zero due process, zero way to respond.
And is he in immigration already?
So his SEVIS got terminated, which means basically you're done. You have 10 days to leave. You have zero status in the United States. He's got a lease. He is paid. The amount of international student tuition is quadruple what you're going to pay in-state tuition. Wow. So he's paying $30,000 a year or a semester to do this. And got a lease, he's got apartment, he's a religious leader, he's got 5 kids who are going to school here, and he's been here through a PhD program, which he started as an associate's degree. So he's been here for 10 years, established here, has job offers coming out the yin-yang because he's an engineer that's crazy good from Japan, and told he needs to leave the country in 10 days. I had another one who got stopped for a traffic ticket and didn't have a driver's license. That's why his student visa got revoked. I had another one that got in a fight with a roommate, didn't get arrested, but got cited by the campus police because they argued, and that got, again, 10 days, get out of the country, see you later, no explanation. And they're not even given that explanation. They're not given, hey, you got a fishing license. They're just said, you violated the terms of your student visa, and people are just inventing what possibly could be the reason.
Yeah, violation of fishing.
And all they say is criminal history, and they do their criminal, and they're like, this is what I got. And I had this 20 times in the last, and the news says there's been 1,500 student visa revoked. That's bullcrap. No, it's in the thousands.
If you're seeing that many, you're right.
It's in the thousands.
It's got to be a lot.
And the school doesn't know what to do with them. And they're here. These are people that have been here legally, that are in master's and PhD programs, that are some of the brightest, and people that we've traditionally have wanted to keep here and start businesses. I mean, our Elon Musk is South African.
Yeah.
So I have a real problem when due process is completely thrown out the window.
I agree with that. And
so I'm starting to see these things where you're taking the low-hanging fruit and you're just, And what I've heard is they have an AI program that they started, and they just threw it out there, and they sent out these emails, and we've heard them. They've sent out, I mean, I have 5 or 6 colleagues that are attorneys that are U.S. citizens that have gotten the same emails, but it's because somehow their client's phone number got put in their system as the attorney's phone number. But again, they're not doing any checks. They're just sending it up to Joe Gonzalez, who's an attorney, and saying, you have 10 days to leave the country. And they're opening it up at 1 a.m. going, what the heck is going on? So we have zero, slow the freak down.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with the slowdown. I agree with
do some vetting, figure out what the criminal history was. And are you really, and to some credit, when the client has the money to file a TRO in district court, the government sometimes backed off, and I've had reinstatement with no explanation. I've had some reinstatements just all of a sudden magically reappear, but now you've scared the crap out of everybody, and now schools
Is that what happened with that one fella?
Yeah, so the one kid's been reinstated, but with no explanation as to why.
I don't think you're ever going to get one.
No.
I think you just
I'm sure they go, oh, this is who we're trying to deport. But the problem is I've not seen a serious one yet.
You had to do that for someone just to look at it.
Yeah.
And go,
no, yeah, you've got to file a $10,000 TRO and pay an attorney to do that. And my challenge is that a lot of people don't have the money to do that. A lot of people don't have the resources. A lot of people don't have the knowledge to even do it. I've got a French kid that's leaving in 10 days. He's in the middle of his master's program, and his ticket was traffic. So
he's speeding, and he's on his way back to France.
He's actually a passenger in a car, and he had a driver's license that wasn't from France, that they considered not valid. He didn't get charged with it. He just got cited for some kind of traffic thing.
And
the failure to produce ID or something like that, and paid his ticket, and that's the reason. That's never been a revocation for a student visa.
So
never.
what should due process look like under the Constitution for those that have trespassed into our country illegally? You're not talking about people that are here illegally.
These
so
are
far,
legally.
You've brought up everybody so far. This is legal.
These are people that have gone through the process.
I'm going to put them because that's a kick in the shorts right there for me. I don't like hearing that, and that's ready, shoot, aim stuff. And you're right. Slow down. I agree with that sentiment completely, especially given the fact that what we started talking about is people that are elitists that are just looking at these things and just drawing lines and and impacting lives. And I want the judicial system to stay as pure as it can. Yeah. I understand there's going to be some activism and
I agree that Supreme Court order was harsh, was hastily done. I think it was straight done just to
I agree.
I think it was just slow down. Like, you got to slow down right now. Like, you got to figure this out and put some procedures in place is how I viewed it. Now,
I think they could have achieved it more powerfully by following their own guidelines. I think they could have achieved it saying, we will not look at this right now, but this is exactly what we're going to do when we do.
Yeah, I mean, I guess how many people get affected if you're willing to know that a judge is going to order against you, and you're willing to hurry and tick off a plane in the middle of the night. What else are you going to be willing to do? Well, the 5 months that the Supreme Court decides to take up the case.
Well, so the reality is the long-term effect, in my opinion, would have been far better, because now you have a precedent. The Supreme Court just did what they did, and
it's a very weak order, though. I know Alito and Thomas dissented, but all it was slow down.
Right.
You can't do this without giving them at least. All they said was, look, giving them less than 24 hours notice to fight their claims is not okay. So you need to figure out a policy to give them some time to respond.
I don't really know what the due process would be afforded to. I expect due process, and I don't feel like it's granted very often, even with those of us that were born here and have lived here all our lives and so on and so forth. Due process is iffy in many cases in and of itself.
You're thinking of due process of, okay, are we giving them 10 years to do these like we have in the past? I think the issue is a lot more narrow in this position. This is, for me, are you allowing somebody that you're accusing of being something or being a part of something, are you allowing them to present evidence to say they're not?
Right.
Because the consequences that they're doing here is not just simply taking them out of the country. That's one thing. If you just say, look, you got to go back if you're here less than 2 years, that's what the codified rule says.
So what's the solution?
But the problem is you're a member of this gang, and by the way, you have zero way to respond to it, and we're about to send you to a life sentence in a country you don't even belong to.
So what's the solution? I agree with that. So what's the solution? I think the solution is not a hurried up, but a efficient system, which we've been jumping up and down
You
for
definitely
forever.
need an independent person to look at it.
Efficient system.
Not an
Just
AI program that
agree.
software says, hey, that's a tattoo I don't like.
Right.
Or, the government's confidential informant that told them that he was a member of the gang that they still
No, I
not released.
completely agree. You
So-
need a third party.
And you know that in criminal proceedings,
Yeah.
right? A confidential informant that never faces their accuser,
Right.
that's not going to fly
It
in
won't
your
fly, and it
in your
never does.
court. And a judge is
They
not going to
try.
take that as probative evidence to convict somebody of a crime. And
So-
we're convicting people of life sentences over a CI
So
that
20
nobody's heard
minutes
of.
ago, when you were doing this exact same case, let's just say something like this happened, because you've got some pretty cool stories, sad sometimes too, but some pretty cool ones too. You run the gambit. What would you say would be the system that? Okay, so I would anticipate we've got the speedy right trial, you've got the speedy right, right to a speedy trial, whatever that means in real life, whatever. Anyway, Rule 8 governs that in my world, in our world over here, in criminal world. In immigration world, what does due process look like to satisfy the framework of the framers? Because this is an unusual situation that the framers were all immigrants themselves.
Sure.
So this is an unusual situation we find ourselves in, given that I do want to abide by the Constitution. I do want to follow that. So we need to have some clarification as to how we view that, because somebody that trespasses, you're going to lose your right. You could lose your right of freedom. You could be thrown in jail, whether it's you or me.
And if you're being thrown in jail for trespassing, that's one thing. If you're being thrown in jail for something that you can't that's where I have a problem.
I
When
understand.
you're adding
I understand. So
the
why don't we
trespassing
just
is a
start-
misdemeanor crime that you're going to pay a $500 ticket
Right.
for.
Why don't we start here?
instead of a
They're in
life
jail for
sentence.
trespassing in our country. That's the bottom line. You're here illegally. You're going to stay in right here, and now we're going to figure out what to do with you, and we're going to give it a limited time, and we're going to say 30 days, 45 days, 180 days. I don't really know what the right fit would be. I think that it would need to be a tier system, in that if you're accused of, then you have this much time, meaning a lengthier period of time if you're accused of.
So that's in place in certain ways. Like, for example, if you commit an aggravated felony, those are codified in immigration rules. You don't have relief available to you. There is no way to fight your case.
Unless it's
now,
a DUI.
And a DUI is not considered an aggravated felony. So there you go. And there's rumors of that even changing, that people want DUIs to be considered a more immigration violation.
I don't think they're going to get around to that.
So you have things written in there that if I was to take, I won't even take the case, because I'm like, bro, you're going to be deported. And so, as soon as you can see a judge, you're done. And so those people are gone in 45, 60 days.
Okay.
If they exercise their appellate right, maybe they're gone in 6 months instead of 60 days. If they want to challenge
So
whether that
let's say
aggravated
that
felony is true.
you've got a person accused of being an MS-13 individual. How long should they be given to show whether they are or not?
So because that one's not a codified. That's a codified rule that if you are truly, so that's a tough.
I
The
deal
gang
with the same
thing's a
thing
tough-
with gang.
The
Here.
gang thing's a tough one, because you deal with it on the criminal side, where I'm sure cops are accusing people of being gang members that aren't.
Yep, I've been doing it for 20 plus years.
And so
Gang terms, gang unit, gang allegations, boom. I mean, it just explodes the whole thing.
right, because it ends up being, it's not like you're signing a name to a sheet saying I'm a member of the
Right.
Republican Party, which that we can check, we can verify. You've actually signed up and registered as a Republican Party. You're not registering as an MS-13 gang member.
Right.
I think that there are, so right now the government's using this tattoo thing, and there are definitely tattoos that would point you to it. The arbitrary way that they're using all interpretations of tattoos, if there's like one of the ones that they made an argument was that a kid has a crown tattoo, like a king crown tattoo. there is a local in Venezuela. There is a local community that celebrates what they call the Dia de los Reyes. Mm-hmm. His son happened to be born on that day, and so he put a crown on top of, because it's his hometown, mm-hmm. but a crown obviously has something to do with this Tren de Agua thing. He tried to explain it, whatever. I think there's a time that you can explain that, and if it logically makes sense, that date underneath it is your son's birthday. You show a birth certificate. You say, I'm not even near this town of whatever it is. I have been convicted of no crimes. I don't associate with people. I don't know how long that process is. Part of it could be done quicker. Yeah. One of the things that we're struggling with, though, is that we want things done really fast on this administration, but we also want things done very cheaply and efficiently, and sometimes those don't match. And so, right. Again, we had 50 immigration judges fired last week. They were judges that were hired, they put them on a 2-year probation, and their contracts weren't picked up. They got no explanation for it. It's cost cutting is what it is. Yeah. But you can't give the due process, even if it's a 50-day due process, a 60-day due process, if you've got no judges that can do it. So I think the due process at the very minimum, I don't even care if it's a shortened amount of time than what we have, but it needs to be an independent body that is not the accusing ICE agent that doesn't know what they're talking about, or at least side, even if they do, somebody else presents theirs, and then there's an arbitrary.
Yes. I agree with that 100%. Agree with that.
That's how our judicial system has always been set up.
That's the way it should be. Now, coming from
what timing on that, it doesn't matter to me.
What as far as gangs go, dealing with that for a long time, did a lot more gang stuff early 2000s and 2000 and up until about 13, 14. Once the phones started coming on board, the smart stuff and the gamings and all that jazz, somewhere around that time, it didn't immediately cut the gang affiliations out, but it
made it harder.
What happened is everybody got too lazy to be in a gang.
Yeah, no, my kids don't deal with looking at the kid on the red bandana on the side of the street that we were scared of when we were walking across the street and certain colors. My kids don't really know what gangs are, honestly.
Right. They don't know. And it has gone into hiding right up until the last.
It's now more like mafia stuff.
It's made a push back. Here we are again looking at it, not just in immigration stuff, but it's made a little bit of a cameo because I think a lot of kids are getting bored with doing nothing, and so they're going back to jump into gangs and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I don't think it's as much as the family community type of thing that gangs used to represent.
No.
I think it's more just crime. Like, I want to organize my crime. And so this is the
it's
people
more
I'm
of a bunch of
with.
hoodlums hanging. They do deal some
money
drugs. They do steal some stuff. It's more of a crime type thing. You're completely right. There's not the drive-by stuff that we used to see.
Yeah. It's not the territory. I mean, if it's territory, it's because of money. Like, you don't deal drugs on my corner.
They just say hi in the territory stuff now. It's not quite that way to the degree the degree I've seen, to where I've got people shooting people in school zones, and I represented that case back in
the day
10, 11. I don't see that now. Now I see somebody baked out of their mind because they're on the phone too much and they're on the spectrum and they're off their meds, and then they show up to school and blow their head off, rest that kid's soul. We hear these stories all the time.
But politically, it's just like everything else. It's like the war on drugs, right? Once we made it like our national, like, we got to fight this. Yeah. Even when it dissipates, it makes it easy political fire to be able to say. So look, Trump, he's right. I'm guaranteeing there was bad guys from Venezuela that entered in the country because Venezuela didn't want to keep their own bad guys. Right. And if the rumors were true, they let people out of prison to come here and whatever else. Absolutely true. I wish that wouldn't have happened. I wish we wouldn't have opened the border like that we did, and we've caused ourselves a problem. But what it did was basically give him fire to say every Venezuelan's a gang member, and that helped him with the political side of just the deportation and whatever else. And unfortunately, real people get caught up in it, and that's where I struggle with. As fast as we're doing things, like I said, I have zero problem with even if it's a preponderance of the evidence, even if it's not a conviction, but you are there's been enough evidence, and we can put out in the news that, look, it wasn't just an autism tattoo, it was this and this and this, and he's around these people and whatever else. By all means, be out of our country. My challenge is when you're not giving any opportunities, and I saw it, like I said, I've seen it on that side of things with the gang or political I mean, he's doing the same thing for the student visas on anybody that protested in a political, protest, or post there's a girl that wrote an op-ed piece at Tufts University that was against Israel, and that was now being used as a revocation of her green card. Those types of things, they feel like tools. They feel like weaponization. And we were really big
so
about
much
6 months ago about weaponizing the judicial system,
Yeah.
and Trump was not a big fan of that.
Right.
I feel like we're weaponizing the immigration system right now to go against people that we don't necessarily agree with, and that's meant. So that's what my message is: slow the freak down. Like,
We're going to stop on your message because I do like that message. It's slowed down. I want to be with passenger,
which sucks because
right by your slow down guy, because I really feel like pump the brakes.
Yeah.
I really feel like that needs to be.
And maybe we're talking out of both sides of our mouth because we said we've had a president we've had a government that doesn't get anything done, and we're criticizing him for getting things done. And it sucks. There's a balance with everything. It's my parenting. Like the same
It's
thing.
the
I do
pendulum
something.
thing,
Yeah,
right.
the pendulum. And I swing some way and I go, oh, my kid's did something on his phone he shouldn't do. So now he doesn't have any phone anymore. And I took away. And then all of a sudden that has another consequence
Right.
that I wasn't realizing. And now I can't keep track of him. And then I'm like, I got to come back a little bit. And I got to give him back his phone with maybe some restrictions and
Right.
whatever it is. And so I think we needed to speed up our government as how efficiently we did things, and
but
we
now
did
we
that.
don't like the speed. In
But
the
we went
direction.
1,000 miles per
Right.
hour, and
What
we
I
need to
think
slow down.
is IIE needs to be done. I mean, interior immigration enforcement, and we need to be in charge of it, period, end of story, because we know what we're talking about. That's number one. And frankly, we're going to be lauded by both sides and hated by both sides. I mean, there is no middle ground. It is both sides cannot argue with what we would do, and both sides will love us and hate us, depending on who it is.
That's what right? If you have both sides hating you,
Hey,
that means you've got a
that
good
means
deal.
we're doing something real bloody good. So then we've got Alito and Thomas sitting there, and you got to think that they're sitting there with what do they probably smoke cigars or something on top of the I don't know. In my mind's eye, I
Boston
figure
legal.
maybe they do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Alito feels
right.
like a cigar
Alito
guy.
feels like he
yeah.
might be, and Thomas is just sitting there,
Yeah.
probably with a Diet Coke, and he's like, you got to think that these guys are looking at the elites, those other 7, going, don't disagree completely with all this, much like what you just unleashed on us. Absolutely right, but we're doing it wrong. And there's this elitism, this it's present big time in our media. It's present big time in, kids you have to go get a 4-year college, kid or beyond, and it's just like, no, it's not okay to work with your hands. We didn't get to that part today. We will in 2 weeks. It's okay to work with your hands. Of course it's okay to work with your hands. There's bloody dudes that work with their hands that live right next door to you that make more than you and I put together. And so good for them. You know what I mean? I mean, this is nothing to frown on. Now, we grew up in a little bit more conservative areas of the world to where people that worked with their hands were not looked down upon at all. I mean, if my next door neighbor wasn't a plumber, the one to the other side of me was. And good thing there was an electrician across the street, and good thing that's just the way it was here. And you grew up in a build friendly arena too in Utah, and so look, they were sitting there popping off about how. And who cares about this? But how the Olympics and how in the Sam is LA going to host the Olympics and all this stuff? And it's a pretty good question. I mean, how are you guys going to host the Olympics? You look like a fire pit right now, and that's coming on you pretty quick. Let's carry on. It's not funny. It's just okay. But Utah, Provo, Utah, a smaller community, hosted Winter Olympics. And they're likely the only example.
You're giving Provo credit for that?
I'm gonna.
Salt Lake on that one.
What's that?
Salt Lake hosted.
Was it Salt Lake or Provo?
No, Provo didn't host it. Provo's where BYU is.
Well, Salt Lake's
Yeah,
smaller.
it's an hour away, 40 minutes away.
I understand. Okay, so my point is that they were talking about.
Yeah.
I didn't know this. This was news to me. I knew that the Winter Olympics happened there. Not much I knew. You could tell how much I watch it, right? When we go snowboarding, we go.
See,
to
I'm
Provo,
from
so-
Salt Lake, so you call me Provo. That's no good. That's
Okay, so
it's
those are
funny. There's
custom
two
words.
different counties, so I don't know if it's Pinal, Maricopa, if we have the same type of rivalry. But when you hit the point of the mountain and you go into Utah County, which is where Provo is, that's a totally
okay.
different type of people than Salt Lake,
Fighting words,
Salt
then.
Lake County. Yeah.
My apologies.
Ah, sorry, bro.
Okay.
Provo doesn't get credit for the Olympics.
No, the Olympics were in Salt Lake
There
City.
you go.
And they were making a point that Salt Lake is the only example worldwide
That made money.
that made money.
I know, and you know why? Mitt.
I could see that.
It was. I mean, it's very well established. It was bleeding money, and they brought him from Boston, from his private equity firm, to come and basically cut some fat around and make it more efficient and bring in
Interesting.
investors and whatever.
Interesting.
That's how Mitt's whole political career really
Got started.
started.
It's interesting because he did a great job then. I mean, at the bottom, yeah. So the bottom line is that's a great story. So I was like, cool. I wonder what they did, and trim fat, use some, common sense here, there, wherever. But to be the only place that can say they did not lose money. I didn't say they made a whole lot, but it said they didn't lose any.
Oh, and the turnaround was like, because I was there, it was amazing. Like we were bleeding heavy. And then,
Interesting. And then boom. So I remind you, we might be, because Trump is a very interesting fellow in his pace. And I understand that the speed of his pace with this immigration thing needs to.
I mean, it's not just tariffs. It's all. His
of
pace
it.
is fast. So
Yeah. I mean, look, he comes in, he gets a canal.
and it's 100 days, and I get it. It's
Yeah.
that promise.
He comes in, he gets a canal, he starts poking the bear about Greenland. Day one.
Oh yeah.
Like, who saw those two things coming, really? Day one, those were the two things, day one. Not Russia, Ukraine, that was day two.
taking over Greenland. Yeah.
Those, we're taking over Greenland.
Panama Canal.
And we need the Panama Canal back. They're a bunch of hosers. And you know what? Canada, you got to clean your stuff up. That's a day 5 thing. But anyway, this thing has been moving very fast. But why has he been doing it? Well, why has he been doing that is Greenland has the earth materials, the raw materials that we need that we get out of China, period, end of story. Why is he ticked off at Ukraine? Because we're not getting anything in return to what we've given, and that we want in raw earth material. And otherwise, and then we'll just put our businesses over there, and you're automatically going to have some semblance of security because of that. Makes some sense. That does make some sense to me. And Putin might just go, all right, we're just going to keep what we got and peace out. Maybe.
And there's not been a ton of, maybe a little bit of pushback, but that doesn't directly affect Americans in their homes.
Right.
And so those things like
Not yet.
fire, yeah, but
Not yet.
sure.
But then you go give the
Absolutely.
bird with this tariff thing because you've got these things secured. Then you go give the bird to China and say,
We've got,
I've 70% of the world I've got, and I don't need you. We like to have you, but I don't need you.
so do you do those in order?
I would think so.
That's my problem.
I have
so
the
my
same
problem
issue.
is not the policy. My problem is not what the idea is.
I
My
have the same
problem
issue
is
that you have.
how you implement that by, like, I'm never going to be able to give my kid 50 rules and expect him to be able to obey 50 of them at the same time, remember what they are, and be able to adjust his entire life over 50 rules. I'm going to give him line upon line. We're going to precept upon precept. We're going to go in order.
Step by step
and
by
especially
step.
if you're a good, I wouldn't even say a good businessman, just a good logistical person, you're going to put things in place so that you have more fodder, so that when I'm approaching, like I had a guy that on the intake, it said, he's coming to tell you how to run your business, right? This is a client of mine. And so I spend the day looking over his notes going, what is he gonna complain about here? And I'm got notes ready. When he says one thing, I'm going to say, no, you said this. And I have everything in place in order so that I can respond.
Sure.
It ended up being nothing. He just
Right.
wanted to meet me in person, and he had done a Zoom meeting and just wanted to make sure I was a good
real
person.
person.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
whatever. And he was mad because he's an old man. He can't figure out how to work an Excel program. That was his real big
I
thing.
completely understand that, old man.
But that's always my strategy is I never go into an argument that I'm going to purport something that I haven't done research on and have set the groundwork on, because I'm the biggest one, and maybe it makes me an a-hole, but I'm going to trap you in your argument because I'm going to let you talk first, and I'm already going to have had the answer formulated that I know you're going to say.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to let you say all the wrong things, and then I'm going to come back and say, actually, here's the notes, and here's what actually happened in it, and I just want to make sure that we're on the same page type of thing. And it always makes people go, oh, crap. I feel like Trump could use a little bit of that advice. Like, set it up. That's fine. If Greenland was your solution to getting out of China, go after Greenland.
Oh, no, not just that.
Just
though.
don't do it at the same
I
time.
understand what you're saying. The speed, we're right back to the speed of things, a little too fast, little too, but I wanted to actually talk about this whiplash, about the pendulum, and that was, and you're bringing this up.
Yeah, maybe
and,
just
and
doing
so
it in
this is
different
just,
words.
This is just the same way. We're just going fast. Now, is the speed part of, is it part of
The strategy?
the strategy?
Like the shock
I
and
don't
awe?
know. I don't know.
We have to have faith, I guess. If you really are
I don't
have
know.
faith in it, then
I'm
you
not
have to
willing
believe
give
that.
up I'm not willing to put up the white flag.
Yeah, you have
But
to believe that.
I'm going to say I don't know. Okay, I am willing to be straight up.
Yeah.
I don't know, and I don't love the speed either. It's breakneck. I don't like how fast we shook up the bottle. Probably last administration and this one too.
And I agree. Sometimes the more you hit somebody with something, they can't respond, and then they give you what you want. I know that's his art of the deal type of situation
Right.
in his business, and maybe if he's going to negotiate something, he's basically going to say, I'm your biggest account, and so you either give me this or you don't, and I'm going to back away from it. And he's always done that, and it's worked out for him.
Yeah.
The unfortunate part is it's not just his company, it's his country.
Right.
And so you've got a lot of different elements in a country that you don't have in a company. And when you're
I
messing
agree
with
that.
with economies and whatever else, and especially on the stage that we're on as a world economy, it makes me nervous. I like to have faith in my government entirely. And so right now my faith is in President Trump because he's in charge of our government. I'm worried about our government in general right now.
Right. Agree. I believe that there's going to be a few wins within the next little bit, and I think that this time frame, or this hot pace, it doesn't bother Trump at all. I don't feel like it even bothers him. I feel like the setbacks and the circle arounds do.
Because he has faith that,
Yeah.
and he should, and I would hope you'd stick to your convictions.
I don't think they bother him, and I think
I
he's
just
got
hope that-
right people in place for the most part to continue on the march. However, every little thing could be analyzed and is being, and depending on which side of the spectrum you say, there's your pendulum swinging way back and forth, way back and forth, way back and forth. Are there many things that need you and I in with immigration? Yes, I love our program, and it would work, and it would be welcomed here. It would take off a lot of heat from the immigration process in general. It would be awesome. Let's carry on. But elitists, so we've got Alito and we have Thomas sitting at top of wherever they sit in there, whatever. They're probably got, I don't even know if they even like each other, but I think they probably do. They've been together a long time.
They're probably the two.
They probably
two
get
most
along just
conservative
fine.
judges in
Yeah.
that.
Are you talking about one of the two Supreme?
They're both Supreme Court. Yeah. Yeah. Alito and
They've probably been. Are they the longest tenured?
they're the
right now?
longest tenured.
Yeah.
They're the mossbacks. They're the graybacks. So what you got is you got these two going, which did it wrong, and I don't want to fall into just because somebody else is doing it wrong. Congress is doing it wrong.
That we are
The
going to
administration is doing it wrong. This is doing it wrong.
And that's
our
where
legal system is doing
And
it
I
wrong. And
totally,
now here we go.
I totally agree
doing
with
it
you, and
wrong.
that's where I'm really struggling with. Like I said, the government in general, not just this administration, is that checks and balances we're not respecting right now. Congress is not doing anything, so their whole lawmaking, rulemaking crap, it doesn't even happen.
Right.
The president doesn't care what the judiciary says, and if the judiciary is against him, he wants to fire him and wants to impeach him and whatever else. And so there's no respect there.
And we rewind.
Then the
this-
president says the judicial system slows him down
Yeah.
on his policy. And so when we're ignoring judicial orders,
Westover,
when we're
3 years ago,
And I
we were
get where
talking
Trump's
3 years ago, we were talking about
weaponization of the judicial system
I
against
understand.
him makes him nervous about the judicial system in general. He's had
sure.
personal
But
experience.
let's
with
just go 3 years ago, before all that crap. Trump's crap was probably going on. Let's go 4 years ago. And you've got maybe 3 years or 2 years ago. We've got Biden saying, I don't care what the Supreme Court says.
Yeah,
We're gonna do
it's
relief.
been
We've got, I'm going to stack the Supreme Court. We've got da-da-da-da-da-da-da. So we've got both, two wrongs don't make a right. I've already said that, right? So Alito and Thomas are sitting there talking about two wrongs don't make a right in my mind's eye. Two wrongs don't make a right. That was basically their dissent, is the wrong that the Supreme Court was doing, and they were dissenting on the process.
Yeah, procedurally,
on procedure grounds. And so you've got two wrongs don't make a right. We got to stay clean here. We got to stay, without reproach. Our judicial system is too important, and people have already lost faith in it long before this Trump character, and Biden didn't help it any.
So how can the court get back their power? I mean, that's I think your issue, your point is well taken. That we need to be back into the days where we do things slow, and that's I mean, basically their dissent was we need to slow down and do this the way that it's supposed to be done. Yeah. At the same time, it's breakneck speed on the other side with no listening to the judicial orders, and so.
So what do we start with?
So when does the judicial get its power back? So where is it where Trump says, okay, I get it. I've got to stop this because a district judge or a circuit judge said I need to slow down. Now I'm going to appeal it to the Supreme Court, but I understand that the judicial has got the final say on this. And so it's going to take me 6 months. It's really going to piss me off, which is how we've always done things, right? Mm-hmm. But right now, that's the problem is that those orders aren't even being listened to. And so where does that judicial order become? I don't know if they're
being listened to or not, because here's the problem. Is the ruling was after it already been done. Does that make sense? You already have the people already gone. And now a judge comes and pipes up. And the judge itself, that particular, these judges, these circuit court judges need to check themselves too and look at the situation and go, well, really, are we going to go reach into El Salvador
and pull them out,
some dude out, and bring them back?
And the one individual, like I get it. One individual doesn't make an entire nation, and that's, you got to be careful with that particular issue. But even like on my student visa issue, you've now thrown this procedure in with no due process. And if you didn't have a judge stick up and file and some, it's funny, all across the nation, it's different. Like in Oregon, a TRO was granted and 30 people got their student visas back. But in Ohio, the judge punted on it and said, not my issue, immigration issue. And they all got theirs revoked. So it's not being consistent. And you've got, so again, you've got a government that put nothing in place to be able to protect somebody in the sense that, and this is like we talked about, this is not the illegal, this is the legal people that have done the process and already been vetted. You've done nothing to put in place a procedure to respond. And it makes me nervous that I just put myself in their shoes and go, okay, if I decided to do a semester abroad in Italy and wanted to go take a cooking class or whatever it was, or go study architecture in Italy, and I moved my whole life there, and I plan to spend the next 3 years doing this, and I got a letter in the mail saying, by the way, you have 10 days to leave, and if not, and this is the other part about it, we will come and detain you and put you in a detention center. And so now I'm going, I got 10 days to leave the country, or I'm going to be in jail in Italy. Like,
that'd be unsettling.
Yeah, and so then I'm like, I hate Italy. I'm never going back there again. I
don't even speak Italian. It'd be hard.
That's that breakneck speed where I get.
So
but everybody's going so fast that the Supreme Court's now reacting fast.
So you asked.
Yeah.
So you asked. You
do that?
I know. I was pretty good. Hopefully it kind of comes with a boom on it. Yeah. Who knows? So you asked, how do we get respect back of the judiciary?
Yeah.
The judiciary. Let's use that in a sentence. All right, the judiciary. We want the respect back there. Well, A, they have to start acting like it. B, and that's what Alito and Thomas were saying. And that's what the youngins over there are losing. And so they'll learn. They'll learn. That's why there's the older ones there making this scathing dissent to save. They're keeping their powder dry for something else. Okay, but they also see that there's 7 very influential, very ready, shoot, aim justices right now. Ooh, hold on, I didn't. All 7 of them? Geez, I thought we'd at least get Roberts or whomever, but. Okay.
Yeah, and I think it was, I mean, and we're going back in circles, but I think it was when you are, due process is the most fundamental part of a judicial system. And when you're threatening due process, I think it just scares the crap out of anybody.
Right.
Like you're calling them, shoot at this side, that they're ready to shoot and fire and whatever else without the procedural stuff. But I think this wasn't like an abortion right. This was like the basis of a judicial process. And when you were threatening that, I think it scared the crap out of people. And I'm not saying right or wrong, but that's because we're moving at that kind of pace. That's what caused it.
So how we get back to, we respect, that would be a very large word to use for the judiciary. We respect the legislative and we respect the executive. How do we get back there? Well, I feel like in as much as there's so much smoke, clutter, and all that jazz, I feel like we're getting there because people that go to college, you and I use bigger words than other people, than Reed. He has to stop us and ask who Thomas is or whatever this word means. He's a young man. I mean, I'm not ripping on you, Reed. I'm just saying you're a young man, you're learning. But we use a different vernacular than many others. But we don't look down on somebody that doesn't, that chooses different, ways to explain things.
Sure.
And we're getting increasingly less elitist. We're less impressed. To impress Reed and his young mind, you have to be, it doesn't matter how you talk. It doesn't matter how exactly, if you make sense. If it makes sense
it's a questioning
to them.
generation, right?
Yes.
Absolutely.
That makes sense. And so that's starting to spread. Because you know how when the songs all started aiming towards the youth started going, it smells like Teen Spirit. I mean, it started getting a little bit out of control. Elvis time. All that jazz. Okay, fine, but it also spilled up, it punched upward, meaning Reed's generation, this younger generation, this questioning generation that you brought up, is definitely affecting you and I.
Sure.
We work with them. We represent them. We raise them. We're learning from them. Whether they
and
think
I
it
have
or
to
not.
relearn stuff
Right.
that
I'm learning.
I have to learn why I believe the certain way that I believe, so that I can justify that belief. Yeah, absolutely.
So interesting. Yeah,
And I love it.
I do
I'm
too.
totally-
I'm excited about it, and I don't think you and I are alone.
Yeah, I'm learning all about tariffs for the first time in my life.
Yeah, I think that they're riveting. I feel like if used right and frankly in small doses, because I think that's what it's going to end up being. But
And I'm learning that the political, and we always knew this, but
Yeah.
it's one more evidence to me that you can manipulate data to make it fit your agenda all you want. Because I've learned
all knew they could
I
crooks.
learned that, what we're saying are tariffs aren't tariffs necessarily. And I understand why we're using it because it makes it an easier way to explain it. But yeah,
It's so interesting.
It's that headline thing where
it's all about
it's
the
actually
headline.
trade deficit, not tariffs. And
Right.
then it doesn't mean that it can't be still used, but
Sure.
I mean, it's
It's an interesting thing, and so to me, I would like to be in bed with Mexico and Canada again. I would like to have the majority of the world as good trade partners. Period. End of story.
life was okay.
Life was okay. I'd like better trade partners. I would like better trade partner with Mexico. I'd like a better
and that
trade
might
partner
be a
with
conversation,
Canada.
like you said, with another podcast. We'll have to talk
Yeah,
about
but
what that
respect-
manufacturing within the United
Yeah.
States, whether that is going to put us on a better path or
Well, you
a
and
worse
I would
path.
have a lot to do with it if they would listen to our program, because
Because then we don't have to outsource it to China. Shoot.
Did I see? You are way ahead of us. You're way ahead of everybody. All right, but how do we get that respect back? I think we've got it with them, the questioning generation, and I think that the elites are starting to crumble. The Bud Lights, the Harvard, they're starting to crumble. Yeah, we can talk about Trump and his beef with Harvard. Who cares? It's the fact that most people are like, who cares?
So here's my closing thought, because I think you're right. I think on the grassroots level, you've got people that are. We had such a divided country, and I don't know. Maybe I believe this, maybe I don't. But I do feel like our generation, they hate each other. We still are in the mode that if you don't agree with me politically, this is not me, but we're in the Facebook mode where look, the last 8 years have been rough, and so if you don't believe with me or don't fit my political opinions, you're dead to me type of thing.
Right.
That's not me, but that's still happening in my
Sure,
generation.
it's happening.
I don't think it's happening with them.
No.
And so I see that as a major positive. But it's even worse on top of us. Well, and the elitists that are in charge of the government right now, both the last administration and the administration that we've got right now, is of the opinion that if you don't believe what I believe, then not only are you fired, but you're canceled and you're the worst person in the world. And we're going to, so I hope that these guys can start to push their agenda. But I mean, you worry that if school protests are going on and different things and that's the people that we're targeting to silence.
To me, it's not the protests on Harvard. It's the Hamas crap that wasn't protesty. It was the statements made by, higher ups. And
that's fine give
staff.
that the opportunity to be developed, like narrow your issue, narrow what you're actually going after, instead of getting the low hanging fruit of the op-ed piece that the one girl writes, and go after the administration.
Well, I don't understand.
After whatever, but
I don't understand who is actually pushing the narrative, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Now, if we want to look at this administration, we want some respectability back in the judiciary, in the executive, and heaven forbid the legislative. Holy crap, that'd be nice.
It's almost like that branch of government just gets completely.
It just,
to me, I have zero respect for them because they just don't do anything.
They're wimpy on Popeye. That's it, to me. They're just wimpy on Popeye. So this administration, I'm going to give you an example, and then we're going to tap out. You and I will, I think, and read, I think all of the generational stuff going on in here will understand this pretty well. I think so. Trump and those that are Mr. Wonderful, O'Leary, those that are in the trenches as far as trying to be executive leaders, the Elon Musks, the Doge system, a handful of folks that are really Rubio, so on and so forth. They're the fellow or gal, could go either way, in their room or in their house getting ready for a date. They take care of themselves. They go to the gym. They eat certain things. They are really, it matters to them how they present once they walk out that door. They want to be formidable. They want to be respected. And they want to show strength. Okay? That's our administration. They want to show strength. And that doesn't mean they're not going to somebody important or going on something that's important, or they're wide-eyed or clear-eyed about where they're doing or where they're going. But that is this administration. They're going a little fast with that getting ready thing, and I agree with you 100%. And I kind of hope that's part of the strategy. And I don't know. I don't know, and that I'm just willing to hold the white flag up. I'm just willing to just
keep it down.
Yeah, I'm just willing to hold the line to hope for that, because I do understand that there needs to be some victories. I do understand that there must be a pathway that is being explored. I don't believe Trump wants to deport everybody. I don't believe Trump wants to do this, that, and the other. I do believe that he's concerned about gangs, but to what level, I do not know the sincerity of that level, if that makes any sense. There are people dead. There's a lot of headlines that you can go on, so you can't just quite ignore it altogether.
And like I said, the shock and awe campaign was obviously
you can't ignore it
what
altogether.
He decided to do.
You cannot ignore it altogether. I mean, yes, I've represented people that have shot people, killed children. Yes, in a gang, and they were born here. Okay, and I know that they've been labeled a gangbanger before they did that, and they didn't do themselves much help on the outside. Okay, outside of prison. But the point is that is where they're doing. They're making sure their belt's on right below the button line, just straight. They've got their shoes tied up and shined, and their hair done up, makeup with the female side of things, whatever the case might be. But they are showing up strong, and that is what is important to them, and I believe ultimately should be the case. Now, the judiciary needed to have heeded Alito and Thomas because they failed in example. Now, I don't disagree with what they did, and I'm going to take some flack with all 457 people that are watching this that need to subscribe and hit the bell and all that jazz. But at the end of the day, they weren't wrong. They jumped the gun. And what they're, I mean, again, it's the pot calling the tea kettle black. So
Yeah,
they
we both
also,
are speaking out of both sides of our mouths because
Right.
we want something done quickly and efficiently, which we haven't gone down. That's what we complain about in
And
Congress.
so then they do it. They
And then
pull
the
they
judiciary
pull the
does
Trump.
it and does
like
does what we
they
want.
pull the Biden,
but we're like,
Trump.
yo, judiciary, you can't do that. You got to slow down. You have to do things
It's
procedurally
so
the right
interesting.
way.
I know. And oh, by the way, we still have a Congress? Oh, yeah.
And that's
Wimpy.
and maybe that's where that the biggest threat is that because the judiciary is now flexing its muscle. Right now, it's been the president that's flexed the executive branch has been
Well,
the
at least
strongest.
we have two.
We've had this, yeah, and
The one that should
we had
be.
one really strong and two that sat below here, and one that was not even worth its spit. And now we had a judiciary that went and flexes its muscle, but maybe in a different way that we're not used to. And we still got Congress that is not balancing either one of them out. So.
Congress is the core of the human body.
It
He's the core of our
literally
bloody
is supposed
government.
to be the government.
It's the core, and so you
Both
go to
of
the
those
gym.
other are supposed to be checks and balances
Exactly.
on Congress.
You go to the gym. You've got the executive that might be the butt and legs, and you've got the judiciary that's the arms and upper body, whatever,
And
right?
here's
But
your-
the core
Yeah.
is everything.
gonna
If you
hold
got a
up
bad back,
both ones.
it's your core. You got to, you know what I'm saying?
No.
Everything is core. We don't have one.
No.
We don't have a dadgum core. What do you got?
So I know that there's checks and balances for each part of the section of the government.
Theoretically.
Where you can, tell one to press on the brakes. Is there a way to get somebody to tap on the gas instead?
Term limits maybe is the only
Yeah.
thing that I can think
Amen.
of.
And we've talked about those before. Term limits would help.
You get somebody down from
Not so
6 years to
divisive.
4 years, and then you give them 2 terms max. And I
Look-
mean, there's some things that probably could give people some more motivation because right now the problem with Congress is that, I mean, to give Reed kind of an example, is that you've got lifers in there. You've got guys that have been here for 40 years, and all they're worried about is getting reelected. They're not really worried about doing
and
anything.
continue making their money.
So
So
maybe
are
one of
they
those.
the ones in charge of changing that to be having term limits, or is that a different?
It's good. That's
That's
a
them.
good. Yeah, that would be.
They're never gonna do that.
That's
That-
theoretic.
Yeah, unless you get a generation like you guys that go, our government's screwed up and we got to get it back, and think logically, then maybe. I think you've still got a little bit too much elitism going on there now,
Yeah.
but it's starting to weed out a little bit.
Yep.
We have a lot of young
Yep.
Congress
it's weeding.
people.
It's weeding.
And I would hope that those young Congress people aren't, I'm going to spend the next 60 years in Congress. I hope it's, I don't know though. I don't know if there's still this ability that the legislature is going to be my
So
career
much
instead of just a
money.
service.
Here's what I'm going to answer Reed's question with what you brought in. All right. You were listening to who on your way in?
Yeah, and Gingrich was on the radio.
Gingrich. He was a House Speaker during half of President Clinton's the most profitable the most profitable our nation's ever been under my watch. As far as
Yeah.
I mean the early 2000s were pretty profitable too, under Bush. So anyway, let's carry on. Newt, this is a good example. Gingrich was the House Speaker, okay, Republican. Tricky Dick Clinton was not Republican, he was Democrat. They worked hand in hand. They worked together. Now, they didn't agree with each other a lot. There was some fireworks all the time, but things marched forward. And they marched forward very, very adequately. I would say Newt was a heck of a politician. If your name's Newt, you got to be a good you got to be good at what you do.
Sure.
He's good at what he does. And Clinton, to his credit too, nailed it down on his end. So the executive and the legislature were both hitting on cylinders, and our country
Balanced
looked
each other. Yeah.
real good. That's what it looks like. And we probably didn't have social media pulling down Newt, and we didn't have social media pulling down because he would have really been probably outed.
Didn't he get sexual harassment claims against
Well, he
him?
got claims and all that jazz, but he really would have gotten, not just him, but I mean, and Clinton too.
Yeah,
I mean,
no.
he really would have been impeached, like for real, with all the media we got now.
Yeah.
But the newspapers weren't doing that much on these things. Does that make sense? It wasn't quite as vicious of
Accessible.
a cycle, and so my thing for your questioning generation is patience, and I would also say the same thing to those elitists that are in charge right now that are commanding the pace. Come on, Bring it down a little bit. Let's get a win here. Let's get a win here. Let's slow this down. Let's make this look right. Let's make this be right. Now, with Congress, for it to be right indefinitely, you need Congress. And so the Supreme Court knows this. The executive knows this. They're both going too fast now, and our Congress is going nowhere fast.
And look,
this has been one of the best pods as far as heated and as far as getting into some crap that really matters.
It's been a bad 2 weeks for me politically. I've been pretty conservatively positive before, and it's been a tough just in my
Are you
arena.
Feeling this is cathartic for you?
Yeah, a little bit.
Like
I said, yeah, no, I have no problem, and I have no problem ever disagreeing or talking to people about it, and yeah, I love this type of conversation. But yeah, I mean, I'm in the middle of buying a house that's really ticking me off about what the market's doing right now and how it's affecting what supply and demand is right now. And I'm on the immigration side seeing some really sad stories come into the office. And
when you popped off about those were
the student visa is really
that was
really kind of,
and you're right about the speed.
Got me.
You're right about the speed, and hopefully your challenging of those things goes well for you. Reed, to answer your question, Newt Gingrich, very important piece to Clinton's administration. And that's how things. That's a good reference point for us because it's not too far back.
And even if you go back to the beginning, I think even on the Constitution, as we talked about our founding fathers, closing thought, that we still did that. Like the way we did things then is not the same we did now, and we progressed, and we the Constitution ratified slavery at one point, and we made changes, and we evolved and whatever else. It's done through a process. That was done through a war that took several years, and I wish it didn't happen. But we've got to be careful about just completely changing the entire nature of our country
I feel like
in 100 days.
That document needs to be revered, and 100 days is still only 100 days. Let's really kind of think on this.
I love that's become like this big bullet point. Like the 100 days has become like, how much am I going to get freaking done in 100 days?
Isn't that weird?
I get it when you, like I said, we've talked about the legislature doesn't do anything. So this power is coming in and saying, hey, well, I'm going to get something done in 100 days and you're going to see how much I like you or you like me. Unfortunately, the polls are not liking him right now. But
I don't think he cared too much. Honestly, I feel like he's pushing this thing with knowledge of things like the Panama Canal has been done for a long period of time, like that deal has been done for a long period of time. Weird that we didn't, that wasn't front page. I don't know where we're at with Greenland. I don't really know. I know that he didn't really care to own it, but I know that he wants to be all over it. Yeah. And I'm pretty sure he probably got that already too. And so now it's like, okay, next, Canada. Let's see what's going on. They have an election today, yada, yada, yada. There's a lot of moving parts, and slow down. We got this immigration thing that's affecting real people that's under the radar right now due to the tariff. It's being buried by tariff. It's being buried by, so we've got elites behind the wheel that are losing control, and you've got the questioning generation, Reed's generation, your son's generation, Caden's generation. You've got them pulling the elites over for speeding, saying, oh, okay. And that's your questioning generation. That's where we're at. So let's get the word out there. I can't wait to pod with you in a couple weeks. We'll probably go a little, we'll make this one into 2. Who knows?
Sounds good.
Good seeing you, man.
Good to see you.